Tonight, it's Batman versus a giant squid, and you won't believe who comes out on top. It's Batman, obviously. After a few weeks of dicking around, Batgirl remembers, oh right, I have an arch villain, I should probably do something about that. And it's time to meet Forever Man and the Infinity People, or whatever his name is. This book isn't gonna last more than like 2 weeks. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 145 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and usually I kind of like sit and I think for a minute before I start the show, just to think like, is there anything I want to talk about? Is there anything that could be like an interesting story or some sort of call to action, as YouTube has told me numerous times I need to do to get people engaged in the comments? Leave a comment if you think that's stupid. But this time I literally just started recording and I had never thought about anything I was going to say here. So moving right along, I guess. Yeah, we've got 12 comics coming out this week. Really a pretty normal week, all things considered. I'm so happy that once Forever Evil ended, we got back to just like a period of normalcy. However short-lived it may be, because I know we're very rapidly approaching September. It's going to sneak up on us before we know it. And of course, we'll have our yearly, here's a bunch of special stuff. This time it's the Future's End tie-ins, but we're not there yet, and I'll appreciate the normalcy while I can. Anyway, comics this week, as I said, no particular order. We have Detective Comics, Batgirl, Birds of Prey, Superboy, Superman/Wonder Woman, Green Lantern Corps, Justice League United, World's Finest, Constantine, our 2 weekly series, Batman Eternal and Future's End, and a brand new number 1. Yeah, you thought we were all out of number 1s, didn't you? Don't know why you thought that. We've got new number 1s up until like 6 months before this show ends. But yeah, no, first number 1 of, I think we're on like wave 7, wave 8. We're definitely close to the end, and that is Infinity Man and the Forever People, written by Dan DiDio. Hold on, and Keith Giffen. I gotta admit, I'm not super hyped about this new number 1. A lot of times we go into a new number 1, and I'm like, okay, someone managed to get through the editorial process. They managed to pitch a story that DC decided, yes, that's willing to be read by however many people we can sell it to. But the moment you slap Dan DiDio as the writer on there, I immediately know that he didn't have to go through that process. He's just the co-publisher. He can just do these things. So, not looking forward to that. But regardless, it's here. Anyway, in terms of other event stuff going on, Superman/Wonder Woman is the next part of Superman Doomed, and Green Lantern Corps, that is the next part of Uprising. But like I said, beyond that, pretty normal week, all things considered. So I guess we will, unfortunately, jump right on in to Infinity Man and the Forever People. Infinity Man and the Forever People, number 1, written by Dan DiDio and Keith Giffen, art also by Keith Giffen. So, Jack Kirby, talented writer, talented artist. Dan DiDio has a huge thing for him, and we have to just endure that whenever he gets the inkling to write another comic. Last time it was OMAC, now it's Infinity Man. So we open up with the cosmos, and there's a speech from Highfather basically saying like, there's light and there's darkness, and we're new gods, and we're in charge of making sure the light wins out. So go team. And turns out that was like a graduation speech or something. So we meet with a young woman who apparently was part of the graduating class, and she's running across a boom tube terminal because she's late. She was supposed to be at the other end. She mixed it up, and now she's trying to make sure that she doesn't miss out on this assignment that she's been working all year to get. So as she stumbles to where she's supposed to get to, she sees a young man named Mark Moonrider, and by the way, the woman's name is Serafina, as we discover later on. Mark Moonrider's working on a mother box, and he's like, yeah, no, you didn't miss it, but it's because I can't get the piece of crap working. Beautiful Dreamer Beautiful, whatever her name is, right here says that I should try turning it off and on. But it's a mother box, and I don't think it has an off switch. And she's like, well, give it, everything has an off switch somewhere. So Serafina picks it up. She's so eager to get going. She just starts like shaking it. She wants to try to figure out how it works, when all of a sudden a voice comes in from behind. And I can't remember her name because they only say it once, like 3 pages from now. But there's this woman here who is the girlfriend or whatever of a boy named Viken, who Viken is a big tough guy, and turns out he is the brother of Serafina. And Serafina's like, you can't get angry with me. This is my choice. I made it. And he's like, I'm not angry with you. And he storms past her and goes after Mark, because apparently the whole reason that he thinks she took this trip, this assignment, is because she's got the hots for Mark. So at that point, they start arguing with it, and he's just like, oh, you are one of the High Father's youths. You've always had a trouble with me because I'm a rebel. I don't play by society's rules. And he's just like, I'm going to kick your ass, man. So they start fighting for a while. We see the girlfriend's just like, oh, Serafina, look at what you've done. You've caused such a mess here. And she's just like, shut up, man. I don't care about you at all. So Viken accidentally touches the mother box, and then all of a sudden it activates. And the whole boom tube opens up, and everyone's like, what do we do? And then all of a sudden there's a hooded figure over in the corner who's like, well, seems like the mother box has made its choice. And he unhoods, and everyone recognizes it as their headmaster, Hyman. That's a horrible name. I know. Hyman. Much better. So he's like, all right, well, I thought I was going to have to cancel this trip because the mother box wasn't working, but now it seems like you're the mother box is bonded with you, Viken, and you need to go along on this assignment. Get them to their place they're going. And he's like, I'm not part of this at all. Why would I go with? And he says, like, okay, but like, you have to. It's an order. So Serafina jumps in and basically tells him what for. Says, like, you better go with me. I did not work my ass off just for you to stop me here at the finish line. And Viken turns to his girlfriend named Azurte, and she's just like, do whatever you want, man. I ain't going with. So they all leave through the portal. He's like, I'm just going to rebond the mother box to someone on the other side and then boom tube my way back home. 5 minutes tops. So they go through, and as they come down on the other side, they all topple out. And of course, it's Earth. And we get this discussion between caption boxes. We figure out who it is later on, but it's basically the introduction. We get the breakdown as to who each of these characters are and what's so special about them. Serafina is sister to Viken. Viken is like super high up in ranking with the New God Army or whatever. Mark's a rebel. Serafina's the one with the heart of gold or whatever. And then Dreamer Beautiful, that's going to catch me off forever, is the weird one. So at that point, they all arrive on a beach, and then going to meet them is one of the people in the caption boxes. And he is a new god whose name is Big Bear. And he's like, hey, I'm your welcoming committee. I'm here to welcome you to Earth. Welcome to Venice Beach, California. And get yourselves acquainted here. I'll show you guys where we're going to be living at for a while. And Viken steps up. He's like, not me, bro. I'm out of here. There's no way I'm going to stick around in this hellhole. Like, look at this. There's a dude who's sick hanging out by a dumpster. Where's the health care on this planet? And Big Bear's like, well, that's pretty much the reason you guys are here, is because Earth sucks in a lot of ways. And it's our job to help guide them into, like, what they need to be, you know? Anyway, it's like a motel sort of thing going on, but as rundown as it looks on the outside, don't worry, I've got my Kirby, and it is just called Kirby. And they're all like, what the hell's a Kirby? And it's like, oh, well, he's my you ever watch Doctor Who? It's the TARDIS. And so they open up the door, and then inside of this motel looking place, it's a giant like mix of technological stuff, and it's all bigger on the inside. And Viken's like, okay, well, if I was staying here, I'd be okay with staying here, if that makes any sense. So at that point, Mark's like, hey, look, our assignment, like, we weren't told very much about Earth. It was kind of pretty light, all things considered. Could you tell us what's going on here? And then Bear gets a call on his communicator or whatever. He picks it up. It's Hyman. And he's like, dude, you said you would call the moment they crash through. It's been like 20 minutes. You haven't called. What's up, man? And Bear's like, that's a good question. Let me get back to you on that. And he hangs up real quick. And he's just like, who cares about following the rules? So then we just stop that plot entirely. And we go over to Sudan, where apparently there is some genius billionaire who is turning the deserts of the country into lush farmland. And in doing so, something has awoken. The scientists are running through the field of crops, and as they make their way into a building, it's like, geez, man, our coworkers died. Something got them. We should be safe in here, though, as long as there's no open windows. And then they feel a breeze. And of course, these two weird robot bug-looking creatures come down, and apparently it's the faces of their coworkers. And it's like, oh no, they've been assimilated. We're done for. So they get attacked, and then we get their leader, I guess, who says, take your time, my hungry children, there will be plenty for all. And it says next time is praying, Prey, with Mantis. So I'm guessing this guy's name is Mantis, and he's going to be a villain. I mean, it's okay. It's an all right setup. I think that obviously we couldn't quite get to the Infinity Man part of it, but it's also weird to me we haven't gotten to the Forever People part either. I think what's really getting me about this is the fact that it's one of the few series in the New 52 that wasn't collected into trade, which already comes with super negative connotations of it was that unpopular. So the fact that I'm reading issue 1 here and then it just kind of ends and it doesn't feel like I even know what we're doing as an overall thing. Like they keep on saying our assignment is Earth, but they don't say what the assignment is for. They don't say what they're trying to do here. So I don't know. I'm willing to say that it hasn't done anything terrible yet, but I am absolutely not holding my breath that this is going to come out to be anything worthwhile. So I'm going to say this is probably, I'll give it like a 6.5. It's losing a lot on art, but that's just because, god damn, DiDio, you really have to understand that, like, the Jack Kirby style worked for the time it was in, but it's gone now. Get with the modern style, please. Superman Wonder Woman number 9, written by Charles Soule, art by Tony S. Daniel. So this is the next part of Superman Doomed in the Enemy of the State chapter, I believe. Last time, Superman, the whole planet got hit with kryptonite, and it weakened Superman, the good part, enough that the bad part was able to come out. So we open up with a visual metaphor inside Superman's brain. We have Clark Kent versus giant hulking Super Doom. And the Super Doom's like, you can't beat me, man. You're losing it. It's the kryptonite's affecting you, but not me. I'm going to win here. And Clark's just like, nah, don't worry. I'm Superman. I will get this under control. No problem. And Doom like reaches out and like grabs him by the collar. He's like, you don't get it, man. I'm death and everything dies. And then Clark just like pushes him away. He's like, yeah, well, I'm Superman, bro. So back on Earth, we see Super Doom like yells out and charges, and he's in Brazil. And Wonder Woman and Hessia are overlooking the damage. You can just see the path that he's carved through the forest here. And Wonder Woman's like, look, there's a bunch of kryptonite in the atmosphere. He's not himself right now. You got to go help him. And Hessia's like, I don't know if I can do that. He's like really messed up. And she's like, please? And Hessia's like, all right, fine, fair enough. So she reaches into her magic bag of tricks and she's like, look, I got all this stuff from Paradise Island before I left. It's crazy ass armor, and she's got like a battle axe, but she's like, it's okay, this is just to protect me so I can get close enough to hopefully heal him. That's my goal here. It'll keep me alive in his killing field zone of damage, and then I can go in there and help. So she jumps in and she says, Wonder Woman, I need you to hang back. As much as I'm sure you can handle it, I don't want to have to worry about you. And she's like, no problem, I understand, thank you so much, Hessia. So Hessia jumps in, and we get the internal back and forth between Doomsday and Clark that are like, Doomsday looks over at Hessia as she lands, and it's like, who the hell's that? And Clark explains, like, oh, that's Hessia. She's a healer. She's a friend of Wonder Woman. She's here to help. Just watch. She'll definitely help. And then Hessia jumps in with her axe and shouts, die, as she takes swings at him. Doomsday immediately just blocks and, like, throws her halfway across the battlefield. And Doomsday's like, yeah, all right. How's that healing thing going, Clark? So as Hessia tries to get to her feet, of course, Wonder Woman's already there. And he's like, you said you would heal him. And she's like, look, I'm a healer. My first and primary patient is the planet Earth, and your boyfriend here's a problem. So I'm making the call here of I'll make a judgment call, see whether or not he's fixable. I don't think he is. For the good of the planet, he has to die. And Wonder Woman points out, like, he's not even attacking. He's clearly fighting back. Like, he's just standing there. Look. Talk to him. Try to see if he's as bad as you think he is. And so Hessia jumps in and is just like, all right, let me give that a shot. And so she leaps in and, like, whispers into Clark's ear and just being like, it was me, Clark. I'm the one who leaked your photo of Wonder Woman and you to the press. I'm the reason the whole world saw you making out. It's the only way that I thought it'd be good for her. But I was wrong. You're not good for her at all. And we see the internal of Clark just like shocked face. And then Doomsday's like, my turn now. So he just immediately throws her like halfway across the country and charges after her for a second hit. As he's about to go to it, Wonder Woman has undone her gauntlets. She's now unleashing her full power as a goddess, and she's like, okay, I don't know what happened there, but she's wrong. Superman, you got to show me that you know she's wrong. And so she ties Superman up in a lasso of truth and just goes out into space. And now that they're outside of the zone of the kryptonite, Superman starts taking back more control. Clark's side does. And he's like, hey, it's me. I mean, I still got like some bumps on my face, but generally I'm good. But like, I can't go back down to Earth or else things are going to get nutty. And Wonder Woman's like, okay, I can't do space travel. The fact that I'm up here is high already is purely because I'm a god. But like, I got to go back down there now. And he's like, I get it, but like, I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to figure out how to deal with this, but I can't be a danger to people on Earth, any life at all. I'm going to go somewhere completely in solitude. And she's like, cool, great. That makes sense. By the way, what did she say to you that pissed you off so much? And he's like, don't worry about it, but tell her that she's forgiven. I guess I get it. And she's like, all right, I'm going to have words with that, but all right, so be it. But you be safe and take me out dancing when you get back home. And he's like, yep, totally will. You haven't even seen my sweet moves. So he goes off to fly off, and he's talking to the Doomsday side saying like, look, I told you I'd find a way. I'm going to get rid of you forever. Don't worry about it. And then immediately he's zapped with laser beams. And it turns out that the Red Lantern Corps, which at this point, if you weren't reading Supergirl, involves Supergirl. And Guy Gardner's there being like, I'm sorry, did you just zap Superman? Why did you just zap Superman? And Kara's like, you heard the news. He's a danger now. We can't let him go free. We have to attack him now. And Guy's like, all right, let's hit him with everything. So the Red Lantern Corps all attack Superman, which of course only powers up the Doom side more. And he immediately grabs hold of all of them and just throws them down into planet Earth. They land somewhere in like a snowy area, and Kara's like, whoa, geez, is there kryptonite going on? What's going on here? And Guy's like, all right, that's enough. We got to call in the rest of the cavalry. We got to do something. But before he can do anything, lasso of truth wrapped around him. And Wonder Woman strings him up and just like, who the hell are you? Guy Gardner. What the hell are you? Red Lantern. Why you going after my bow? And he's just like, oh, we protect the Earth. We're Red Lanterns. That's our thing now. We protect the Earth. I don't want to do this. I think Superman's the best of us, but clearly he's a danger now. And I'm just trying to get him back to a way that we can trust him again. And Wonder Woman's like, okay, fair enough. Here's the thing. He's leaving. Just let him go. Just let him bail. And he will go take care of this. But if you think you can stop him, please do. If you don't think you can, stay the hell out of his way. And finally, at the end, we have the Doom voice taking back over again for Superman. He's just like, yeah, go ahead, fly away from Earth. But remember what I said. Everything dies. So, yeah, I really like this one. I think the internal visual of Clark versus the Super Doom, of like the mental battle between them, the fact that this is the first time it's showing up like 5 chapters into the story, I I think is a disservice to the rest of the story. It should have been this the moment he like realized he was infected. So like 3 chapters ago, we should have like been all in on this idea of the internal mental struggle, because it's such a good visual metaphor here to just show the two of them actually talking to each other instead of this weird Superman has thoughts of kill, kill, kill. Separating them into 2 separate text boxes feels so much more natural here. Beyond that, art's great. I like this sudden Red Lantern thing showing up. It makes it feel like, yeah, okay, the Red Lanterns protect Earth, and here's the thing that definitively is a threat to all of Earth. It makes sense that they would show up here. And also it just makes the world feel a little bit tighter. So overall, super solid issue. I'm going to say this one is probably I'll give it an 8.5. I really enjoy it. I think that the moment where Hesia like reveals that as well is also super solidly done. And then just showing Clark just being like, I'm a bit taken aback right now, so I don't have the mental wherewithal to fight back. And so Doomsday goes on a spree. It's well written the whole way through, and it makes me hopeful for future issues, despite the fact that obviously Charles Soule is not writing all of them, but here's hoping. Green Lantern Corps number 32, written by Van Jensen, art by Bernard Chang. This is part 4 of Uprising, and last time over in Green Lantern, honestly, it didn't really do much. The only thing is that they had a fuel source, which is the planet of the Zezites, I don't know. The fiery looking ones. So we go over to planet Daxam, where obviously last time we discovered that the Durlan's big plan is they're going to turn into Daxamites and essentially be immortal. So as the Lantern Corps arrives, we see the Daxamites like aiming their rifles up at the sky, and they're just like, oh, don't you dare step foot on our planet. Don't you do it. It'll be an act of war. We hate you, Lanterns. And immediately like Druk just slaps his axe and breaks one of the rifles and says like, I swear to God, I'll kill you all. And John's just like, okay, you're not helping our case here, man. And so John starts to try to reason with them, being like, look, you guys are as powerful as Superman under Yellow Sun, but you aren't under a Yellow Sun, so we're here to help you out. And he's just like, look, we learned to protect ourselves. We don't need the Lantern Corps showing up and trying to fix things. And that's where Sodom Yat steps out, and he's just like, guys, Sinestro Corps was the big problem back before, the reboot and all that. So how dare you go against the Green Lantern Corps after all I did for you? And then it turns out Sodom Yat's father comes out as he's like a leader or something, and he's just like, oh my God, my son, you're alive? And he's just like, oh, Dad, I thought you'd be pissed off at me since I left the planet and I don't have the ion entity in me anymore. And he's just like, I don't care about that. You're my son. I'm happy you're back. So John once again restates his case, saying like, Durlans, shapeshifters, we just want to help. We don't want them to transform into you. And the dad's like, look, we've learned. We know how to defend ourselves. We know how we're going to handle this. Let me show you guys what we got planned. And he walks them through the halls until finally they reach their weapons room, which it turns out is not cannons or tanks or anything like that. It's big-ass spaceships. And they're like, yeah, so we are going to send a bunch of soldier Daxamites into the orbit of a yellow sun, and then they will get powers and come back and defend us. That's our plan. We are going to make our own Supermen, and then they'll be fine. So we cut back over to Mogo, where, oh God, I can't even remember this guy's name. Daggle. Ben Daggle, that guy's name. The Durland Green Lantern. He's sitting there talking with Salak, and Salak's basically like, look, I'm trying to figure out a way for the rings to detect Durlans, but like it ain't working out because their DNA is just so mushy. And Daggle's like, yeah, no, they don't have their own DNA. You're not going to be able to trace them that way. By the way, Salak, you said that like they were going to take over the Daxamite planet, like they were going to take Daxamites. Let me ask you this, man. Why would they wait for the very end of their plan to go get Daxamite DNA? And Salak's like, oh, you're right, they wouldn't. And then Daggle's just like, I'm sorry, Salak, I have to do this. It's what needs to be done. And he transforms into like a poisonous mushroom and knocks Salak out. He puts on a Green Lantern ring and walks into a extraction chamber where all of a sudden he gets zapped with a bunch of lightning stuff. So we cut back over to the planet. We get a little bit where Druk is talking to, God, I don't even know her name. They have a whole roster page here. Fesca. Talking to Fesca, and Fesca's like, I'm worried about my home planet. I haven't seen it in a while. This whole war thing's not letting me, like, look after my actual sector. Like, it's not letting me return home. It's been a whole thing. And Druk's like, okay, let's just kill all the Durlans and leave. That sounds like a great idea to me. So we have the people walking down the lines, and they show all the soldiers they're going to send, being like, yep, they've already begun boarding the ships. We're going to take them out there, no big deal. And Jon Stewart's like, if you do this, if you make an army of Supermen, like, you're going to meet players on, like, a world stage here. Are you sure you're ready for that kind of attention? And just being like, psh, who are you to say anything? This is our planet. We don't even want you here. And we get Alicia talking to Sodom about, like, hey, are you going to, like, join them? Are you going to be with you on your dad's side? And he's just like, no, I shouldn't even come back to the planet. This is messed up, man. So turns out this whole time they were just walking into a trap, I guess. And the king leader dude is just like, well, we can't let you go if you're going to be disagreeing with us. We finally have learned our own power, blah, blah, blah. And so they're ready to fight against all these guys. And so we cut back over to the Von Dagel, and he is continuously getting zapped until finally the chamber says extraction complete. And when he falls out, Salak wakes up and he's like, what the hell did you do, man? He's like, I just updated the Ring's database. You can't look for their DNA because they don't have any, but they do have that radioactive isotope that all Durlans have back from the initial primordial goo that we were in. So if you can identify the isotope, you can identify Durlans. And so as the entire Daxam race is about to fire on the Green Lantern Corps, they're refusing to fight back because, you know, this is not the enemy. So they just make some shields. And then all of a sudden the rings get updated and just being like, hey, we can detect Durlans now. And John's like, great, cool, show us who's a Durlan around here. And the entirety of the Daxam race just lights up. They're all Durlans at this point. And the Durlans realize, like, all right, we've been found. Everybody just turn into something cool. So they all turn into monster stuff and start attacking the Green Lanterns. And of course, the Lanterns start attacking back. John, Fatality, Alicia, and Sodom get away. They go over to where the father was, and they're just like, what happened? Was your entire race? And he's like, no, I'm a Durlan too. Hi, how's it going? Yeah. No, we took over this race a long time ago. We just showed up. I got the leader's DNA just from shaking his hand, and we don't want to impersonate the Daxams. We're just gonna replace them. We're gonna take out the entire Daxam race and fill in the slots. But here's the thing, and he turns to Sodom yet, and he's like, here's the thing though. We didn't kill the children. So all the Daxamite children now hinge on you making a decision. Either you stick around and we're going to take your face and use it for our big gross leader who's still in his mech suit, and he's going to use you as like the figurehead of taking over the galaxy under Daxamite rule, or we kill all the children. So how do you want to play that? And Sodom just immediately laser visions the dude's tentacle off, but turns out that was pretty much the last of his power. He's almost drained. He doesn't have much. And there's like, all right, we're screwed. Like they've got the Daxamite abilities already. Like they get off planet, we're totally done for. But that's where it's revealed that John called back in the villain squad. Remember how the villains were all in on fighting the Durlans? They're here now. They've showed up ready to fight. And it's like, all right, we did it. And so John says to his ring, show me who in here's a Durlan. But before he can get the command out, one of the Durlan's like, all right, screw this. I'm done with it. He knocks out Fatality. He grabs John and he's like, man, you keep on saying like, oh yeah, Durlans, you'll pay for your atrocities or whatnot. But like, what about you? You let an entire planet die. Plus, Green Lantern Corps as a whole is the reason that us Durlans like suck so hard to begin with. Did you pay for that? No, you guys suck. And John's like, yeah, well, you can't guilt me about the planet death thing anymore. I'm over that. And so he punches the Durlan a few times, knocks him out of the mech suit. And turns out that he was just running a distraction. He just wanted to get the Green Lanterns distracted long enough for all of their ships to launch up out of the Daxamite atmosphere, and they will get the yellow radiation power that they want. But first, they need to get permanently transformed. So they're going to the planet of Zezites, the Zezik planet, and they're going to get them fully transformed into Daxamites. So Green Lantern Corps goes to leave. Sodom Yat's like, hey, I need to stay. If the entire leadership is like gone off of planet Daxam, I need to stay here and get it back on course. That's something I gotta do. And also, Daxamites really shouldn't be going around the galaxy. One Superman's enough. We don't need more. And John's like, all right, fair enough. If you need any help, you know who to call. And they all fly off. And then the final page is over on planet Zezin. The fiery goop monsters are like, okay, so one of them ate our highest elder and like our leader, but don't worry, we have a Green Lantern member. He will alert because we're a hive mind, he'll alert the Green Lantern Corps and they'll show up here and save the day before more can arrive. And then right then, all of the fake Daxamites show up and landing in their ships, and the father goop character is like, oh no. So yeah, I thought this in the last part, I thought this event was a 4-parter. No, it isn't. I don't know how long it is, but I'm going to stop guessing. I like this one. I think that it could have used a little bit more of explanation for people who didn't read whatever the hell Sodom Yat like was originally from. I'm assuming the Jeff Johns era, pre-New 52, but I don't know. I just had to make a bunch of leaps here in terms of what I think they were talking about, and overall it works, but there are just a few little things that I wish they would have went into a bit more detail, like the father stuff and like why does he hate his own race so much. None of that was quite clicking for me. But beyond that, it's a fine enough issue. I'd say I'll give it a 7, though I am curious what the ramifications of now the Green Lanterns can sense where Durlans are at all times. Like, is that game just over now? Like, is it just going to be a full-out punch-out? Because if so, I'd imagine we don't have more than 2 parts left, but I guess we'll see. But no, 7 for this. Looking forward to whatever comes after. Detective Comics number 32, written by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, art by Francis Manapul. So, last issue, Batman went around asking about the drugs, the Icarus stuff, and who's behind it. And he got the name, after a big fight with Sumo, Squid. So, we get a little flashback here. We see Batman scuba diving. He's checking out a car underwater and getting some information, and he's just like, all right, I've been tracing this stuff. I've been looking for info. Finally, I found a lead to the murderer. I figured out what I can do here. And we cut a little bit ahead to where the car is being lifted out of the water by the GCPD. And Bullock's there, and he's just like, this is Elena Aguilar's car, so great. Who called it in? And he's like, oh, it was an anonymous tip. And he's like, yeah, of course it was an anonymous tip. So Bullock looks around. He sees, like, a human trafficking ring was broken up here. A bunch of people, like young kids, are being sent home. Huge dude, Sumo, is being carted off with, like, his throat, like, cut up a little bit. And immediately Hardy's just like, of course this was Batman. Of course Batman has something to do with this. God, why is he always one step ahead of us? So Bullock goes to check out the car, and he's just like, yeah, look, I can see where Batman's gloves, like, grabbed into the algae that's grown on this car. Like, he's definitely already been in here. Whatever. Give it a once-over, see what we can find, see if we can get any sort of idea what's going on. Do we have a shipping manifest for what's going on in this cargo yard? And it's like, yeah, we've got one container missing. And he's like, great. Get me info on that container and any other you find missing, because I guarantee you it's going to loop back to Bruce Wayne. So we go to the East End Pier, where Elena's daughter, which I can't remember the name of her right now, she's just moping, and she's like talking to her mom ethereally, and she's just like, Mom, why do you even want to come here? This city sucks. Why would you want to, who would want to save a stupid place like this? And then Batman appears behind her, just be like, hi, I would. I do that. And he sits down with her and tries to have like a talk, and he's just like, look, I get it. You don't see the reason for why I do this or why your mom would want to do this either. And I also get that you're hurting and you're just trying to lash out, because I know you've been going out trying to get leads on the drugs and stuff, but that's dangerous. Don't do that. And she's just like, why? What are you going to do to make me stop? Like, Who cares? None of this is all bullshit, you know? Like, who even cares? And he's just like, well, you know, you may in time find comfort that your mom was trying to make things better. It's like, yeah, look where it got her, Batman. Jesus. So at that point, he basically says, like, look, I promise I'm going to find who's responsible for your mother's death. I'm going to make them pay. And he's just like, are you doing that for me or for you? Because really, I just don't want to even think about it anymore. So we get a beautiful 2-page spread here. I cannot understate this 2-page spread. It's Harvey Bullock's apartment, and we're just listening to his messages. First message is his mom saying, like, how a girl he went to high school with is just having kids and married and all that, and she's just like, oh, you two would have been great for each other. Then we cut to a vet's office saying that his cat's chemotherapy appointment's coming up. As over the course of this 2-page spread, we see his 2 cats that he are just like rubbing up on him and cuddling with him. And then we get a third message, which is saying, like, hey, we ran the names on the shipping manifest. We got something. It's a senior VP named Jeb Lester at Wayne Industries. You better come in. And Bullock's just like, well, I gotta go, kiddies. Goodbye. I love the fact that Bullock has 2 cats. I don't know. We just see his full apartment. It's so Bullock, and I love it. So over at Wayne Industries, we see Jeb Lester's on the phone with somebody who's giving him orders. I think it's the guy from like 2 issues ago. And he's basically like, look, it's all circumstantial evidence. They have nothing to pin you to it. Just make sure you destroy all the paper evidence. And he's like, yeah, that's what I'm doing right now, man. And the voice on the outside's like, Jeb, you sound like you're getting panicky. We don't like panicky people. And as Jeb makes his way over to the elevator, turns out Bullock and the GCPD are there waiting for him. So we get a beautiful page of Batman putting on his cowl and leaping off the top of a cathedral. And as he jumps down into Gotham, turns out he's managed to pin down, because of whatever information he got from the car, Squid, the mob boss guy who's behind the drug, actually chills and has his base at an aquarium, an old abandoned aquarium. And Alfred's on the line being like, isn't that a little bit too on the nose? And Batman just replies, Gotham does not do subtle, Alfred. So as he lands, all of a sudden, floor underneath him lights up. We see that Batman's standing over top of a tank that has a giant squid in it, and then underneath there's like a tube that people can walk under, and we see that the light is coming from his cell phone because the one guy in here who was a problem at the beginning, brother of Squid, he's like, I'm just going to record this, and I want to post this onto YouTube. I got 5-1 odds Batman wins. So Squid makes the point of saying, like, hey man, stop causing trouble for me. You're already in trouble with this other gang known as Kings of the Sun. I haven't even wrapped that up yet. He's like, don't worry about it. I got it handled. Anyway, Batman fight. Let's go. So the cage cracks. The squid reaches up, grabs Batman, and starts bringing him down to the bottom of the tank. And we see Batman is very much struggling, but he manages to use some electrified fingertips to shock the squid, and once it gets free and lets him go for a second, he takes off his utility belt and then taps the bat emblem on his chest, which apparently activates a destruct sequence and blows up his utility belt. It causes the bottom of the aquarium floor to just give out, and it floods out into the Gotham Harbor. So there's a giant squid in the Gotham Harbor now, but also Batman manages to hold on the whole time. And as he pulls himself up, we see that not only are the gang members for Squid there, but so are those Kings of the Sun guys. And we've got a full-fledged Mexican standoff here. So, yeah, that's a bit. I'll be honest, I'm losing the plot a little bit here. It's not that it's bad. I actually really like I said, there's a beautiful page here, Batman off the cathedral. I love the 2-page spread of Bullock's apartment, page where Batman appears behind Elena's daughter, also fantastic. I cannot understate how well paced and how beautiful this book looks. It's fantastic. It just feels a little bit complicated. Like, I thought going into this it was going to be, you know, the Icarus drug, that thing that like was set up in the Zero Year issue of Flash, and now we're bringing it here. I like that. I appreciate what we were setting up there, but now we've gotten into all this inner gang war stuff and politics of how Elena was killed, and there was somebody in Wayne Industries who might have something to do with it. If you remember last issue, a shipping container had like a dude who was giving off radiation side of it. It's gotten very complicated, and I don't feel like the issues are explaining anymore. They're just introducing more pieces still. So I'm a little bit hesitant on that. Now, mind you, if this is playing the long game, if the like short term is let's deal with Squid and then we'll get into the like the inner politics stuff, I'm more down for that. But I haven't quite earned their trust here in terms of seeing what they want to do. When they did stuff on Flash, yes, there was a more overarching story being told, but the individual arcs were very much standalone. This one feels like it's starting big and keeping it big. But overall, I do still enjoy it. I'll give it a 7.5. It's fantastically drawn the whole way through and have nothing bad to say about it than that. Batgirl number 32, written by Gail Simone, art by Fernando Pasarin. So, last issue doesn't matter. Batgirl's just going all in on Nightfall. Full disclosure, behind the scenes, this is pretty much the last arc before we get into the Batgirl of Burnside, which is Gail Simone is off the book and we're going to a new status quo. So this is kind of wrapping up of saying, hey, we're finishing up, let's see where we get there. And it feels very jarring when we get there. So Batgirl is just beating up a bunch of dudes who've got specialty guns, and she's like, oh, special tech guns, I know that belongs to Nightfall. How dare she use this stuff on the street again? I'm gonna go get her for sure now. I'm done with her. So she goes and beats up these goons and starts like punching out teeth. And one of them starts to get away. And Batgirl's like, oh, I can't let that happen. Gotta go track that guy down. So the cops show up and she's just like, hey, I'm gonna go get that last one. And one of the guys is like, don't you know? We don't work with suits no more because Batman Eternal's going on. And she's like, oh, right. Yeah, that's a thing. Bye. And she just leaves. So she goes and tries to hunt down the last guy. He manages to get away and she's like, oh, well, that sucks. All right. So she kind of forlornly looks over the city and says, like, my mom is missing. My brother is dead. My dad's in jail. Read Batman Eternal. That's just too much. There's so much going on. I'm definitely going to take out Nightfall, though, because that's something I can control. So we see outside the Gotham Theater, Nightfall, her normal persona of Charisse, has missed the ballet, and one of her minions, her name is Sally. I cannot remember her like villain name. Sally's like, you want me to like call in and tell him to do the ballet again? And she's like, nah, don't worry about it. No big deal. So Sally says like, hey, by the way, one of our raiding parties was hit. We have a snitch inside, and I'm having Gretel go in and take care of the snitch. No big deal. And Charisse is just like, that's not good enough. Let's go scorched earth here. All right, let's make this like a really big deal. And she then asks like, oh, by the way, who was the one who got the drop on us? And she's like, oh, it was Batgirl. And Charisse is like, oh, of course it was. So Charisse turns on the news and hears that Batman Eternal's going on, that Jim Gordon's in jail, but also that Ricky Gutierrez, Batgirl's boyfriend, is suing Jim Gordon because he shot her, or he shot him. And Charisse hears this and just like, how dare that criminal scum try to sue one of GCPD's greatest officers? And Sally's like, didn't you try to have Gordon killed like 3 issues ago? And she's like, that's not the point. Go send a message. Go talk to Ricky personally and get him to drop this suit. And Sally's just like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. So Batgirl goes around the other side of Gotham, and she's looking at all these places she thought she would find Nightfall at, but turns out she has no leads. She's completely picked up and dropped off the map. And she goes back home, locks up her thing, and just being like, all right, I know where I could hit her. I know like her central base, but like that's suicide if I try to go in there. I've got to figure out what to do next. And so she goes into her house, sees something, and immediately closes the door and remarks, oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Apparently, Alicia had a date over, and they weren't done yet. So as she sits out on the stoop, just like, oh geez, oh god, we see this young woman named Jo emerge, and she's just like, hi, I really would love to stay and talk, but I don't want to, so bye. So she leaves, and then Alicia comes out just being like, we were playing Scrabble. So they sit and talk for a while, and apparently Ricky's been calling Barbara like nonstop, and Barbara's like, he's suing my dad, I just can't get over that. And then we cut over to Ricky, who's still trying to call. He's sitting out on a playground somewhere. And then Sally comes in. It's just like, hey, Ricky, remember me? I'm the one who cut off your goddamn leg. And he's just like, oh, God, are you going to kill me? And he's like, nope, not going to do that. But here's what's going to happen. You are going to drop your suit against Jim Gordon. And you're going to do it by tomorrow morning. And that, like, before a press conference sort of thing, okay? Break a leg, Ricky. Ha! And she just goes off. So next morning, Barbara's lacing up her shoes, about to go on a morning run around the block. And then all of a sudden, someone gets the drop on her and says, Miss Gordon, you need to come with me. And Barbara's like, what? And she sees who it is. And apparently it's a woman named Munira Kerudin, also known as Mooney. And immediately she's just like, I have a code name now. My name is Obscura, and I need you to come with me. And Barbara just slaps her. They get into a little bit of a fight, and she's able to hold her own against Obscura, to which a bunch of other secret agents have to come in and put Barbara down with like a tranq dart. And they're like, who the hell is this girl that she's able to hold her own against you, a super trained secret agent, where she's just like a normal who cares civilian? And she's like, yeah, don't worry about it, drop it. And the secret agents are like, why are they so angry at each other? And one of the roommates, or one of the guys says, oh, they were roommates. So we go back to Gotham University, where apparently they were both just 15, and they were having a judo competition against each other. And even when the competition ended, even when the class was done, they continued to fight each other well into the night. So they became friends, and then one day she just disappeared. She died, and now here she is again. So she takes her down to some deep, dark interrogation point, and Barbara calls her out saying, like, you were dead. I warned you. And she's like, no, I faked my death so that I could join a super secret agent thing that is going to save the world, but I had to completely erase my civilian identity to do it. And she calls out and says, like, look, here's the thing. We got a thing codenamed Nightfall is planning something big for this city, bigger than even we can handle. You know this city. You've got some talent. I want you in on this. So what do you say? Let's do it. Also, we have to like fake your death and you have to die, like officially. And she's just like, no, I'm not going to do that. You're insane for thinking I will. And she's like, you don't understand, Barbara. I don't just extend this offer to anybody. You can't just say no to it. Your father is in jail. Your mother is, what was it? Oh, no, sorry, not your mother. Your roommate is an eco-terrorist, and your boyfriend is a gangbanger. Also, your brother's a serial killer, but let's not overlook that point. And Barbara's like, was a serial killer. He's dead now, but I'm not joining you regardless. So at that point, Barbara gets dropped back off in the middle of nowhere, and she immediately gets a call from Ricky. And Ricky's just like, I'm dropping the suit, Barbara. I'm not going to sue your dad anymore. And he's like, Ricky, what happened? And he's like, they cut off my brother's hand. So immediately Barbara just like goes black. She just like fades out, dissociates. And later on in the night, she's like, all right, that's it. This is Nightfall written all over it. I'm done with this. I'm done. And so she calls in Black Canary, and Canary's like, look, I'm in to help. I'll do whatever. But if you're planning a frontal assault, you said to yourself, like, that's suicide. Are you sure about that? And she's just like, yeah, but we got to just try at the very least. And then a voice from above cries out saying, maybe I can help. And stepping into the light is Huntress. And she says, hey, you may know me from the book Earth 2, or not Earth 2, World's Finest. I'm here to help. And Batgirl's like, I have no idea who this is, but all right, sure, whatever. So, new Birds of Prey, except Birds of Prey is already a book that's still ongoing elsewhere. So it's just Canary, Batgirl, and Huntress, because that was the original Birds of Prey. I mean, I like it. Individually, on its own as an issue, I'm fine with it. The secret agent bit's a little bit weird. I don't know if this is a character I'm supposed to know from like previous continuity, but it came out of nowhere. I'd say that's the weakest point for me. Everything else is pretty much fine, but that's on its own. If you look at it from the structure of what has Gail Simone been doing with the past like 4 or 5 issues, we got a vampire plot. We got this thing with like her roommate doing some eco-terrorist stuff. We got like a whole bunch of other things. And then to just very suddenly jump into this and saying, that's it, Nightfall has to go down. I'm like, we could have seeded this just a little bit better over the course of any of those issues, to the point where we had Nightfall in one of them and she was helping. She was assisting in the thing. I don't know. It just felt very out of place to me that all of a sudden it's just like, there's guns on the street. Nightfall must be behind it. So, all in all, I think I'm probably going to give this one like a 6.5. It's not bad, but it's just a very jarring start to what I'm sure is going to be the final arc of the series. Birds of Prey number 32, written by Christy, Marx, art by Scott McDaniel and Robson Rocha. So, last issue, again, just like doesn't matter at all. So, we open up in Gotham Harbor on Mother Eve's barge, and Mother Eve is talking about Strix, who apparently Strix really took a liking to her while she was older and ancient and decrepit, but now that she's metamorphosed back into a young childlike body, Strix just doesn't give her the time of day anymore. So she calls up to Strix being like, can I have a word? And Strix just jumps down and breaks both her legs. And she's like, Jesus Christ, are you okay? What? Do you even feel that? And Strix just doesn't respond as her legs just reset and she heals up. And she's just like, okay, look, yeah, I've got some technology. I can give you a voice. It's not your voice, but at the very least, it's a voice you can control, and it will make you feel heard. And Strix just kind of mumbles and does what you can. And Mother Eve's just like, all right, well, offers on the table. If you ever want it, come talk to me. So on the other side of the world, there's a man named Mambetti, and he's being attacked by some like guerrilla terrorist looking guys. He makes a phone call, says a code word, and says, please help, my car, it's been hijacked. And then all of a sudden he gets knocked out with the butt of a gun, and the gun crushes the cell phone. So meanwhile in Gotham, Dinah is looking over Kurt as he has been transferred to the main part of the city. He's in physical therapy and he's trying to walk again. And she's just like, oh, you're doing great. You're doing fantastic. Keep walking. You got it. You're doing it. And then Kurt stumbles a little bit and he's like, oh, I got to stop. And Dinah keeps on pushing him, just being like, oh, you can do it. The Kurt I know would never stop. And Kurt's just, will you shut up? Jesus Christ, woman. You're hovering around me. I know you think like you're helping, but like you're not giving me a chance to breathe here. And she's like, well, the Kurt I know would be glad for someone to be here by his side. And he's just like, well, that ain't me, lady. I don't even you say that you're my wife, but I don't feel anything when I look at you. Whatever you remember, that's been blanked out. That is gone. I am not that same guy anymore. So you look at me with all these expectations or whatever of being a certain person, but right now I'm just trying to walk again. So how about you just leave? And she's just like, all right, fine. If that's what you want, I'll be back in a few days. So she storms out. Condor's waiting outside, and she's just like, oh, were you waiting here the whole time? And he's like, I got nothing better to do. So she says thanks about saving Kurt's life, and Condor's like, I mean, you're welcome. Also, hey, how did he go from brain dead to like this? And she's like, let's not talk about it. So he's like, all right, well, I've got something cool. You got to come back to my pad to check it out, though. So they hop in his sweet-ass sports car, drive across the town, and as they get there, he's basically like, okay, you know how my wings are controlled via my telekinetic stuff. Like, I use that to fly. I had my tech guy make something for you. Wings that are powered by the energy that comes from your supersonic screams. So all you got to do is just like scream a little bit into them, and then they'll charge up and you can fly around. So he puts it onto her back and says, all right, let's go for a test run. And so she charges up a little bit and then starts flying around the town. She's just like, oh, this is great. This is fantastic. And Condor's like, I'm so happy. I do anything to see you happy again. And Canary's like, oh, I. And then all of a sudden, Mother Eve calls in and says, we got urgent birds of prey. I need you guys. Come over to the barge. So she introduces the Mom Betty guy from before and says, hey, he's part of my lineage. He's like my great, several times removed. He's a good dude. And he just tried to call in for help because of like terrorists going on. Turns out the terrorists are Basilisk related. When we took out Regulus, a bunch of splinter cells popped up, all vying for power. This is in part one of them. Can you go and save my dude? And Batgirl's like, all right, we're going into a like completely separate country. Do we have a way out? And she's like, yeah, no, I'll give you everything you need. Don't worry about it. So Canary goes over and talks to Condor in secret real quick and just like, hey, do you still have any of your contacts in the NSA? And he's like, maybe. Why? And he's like, well, I have a very secret favor I need you to do. Secret from the audience as well. And Condor's like, I mean, I'll do what I can. We'll see what's going on. So Canary gets on the plane and Batgirl's like, hey, new part of your suit. Are those wings? That looks like Condor's wings. It's like, yeah, he made it for me. Should come in handy for the mission. Batgirl's like, hey, Dinah, are you leading him on? Is that what you're doing here? Because that doesn't seem like something you do. And she's just like, no, he knows the score. He knows what's up. He's cool. So we see them invading the country that they're in. It's totally unnamed. And like nothing stands a chance. It's all just second-rate Basilisk people. So immediately they get into the main room and the guy there named Nkonga is like the warlord who's trying to take charge here, and he fires off a few shots at the birds of prey. Strix just stabs him through the stomach from behind and kills him, and Batgirl's like, damn it, Strix, not again, don't do that. So they look down over the edge of a railing and they see Mambetti is tied to a post surrounded by a bunch of like super high reactive landmines, and they'll all blow up if they even get close to it. So Canary comes up with it and just like, okay, here's the plan. Or sorry, not Canary. Batgirl comes up with it and says, here's the plan. You make a shield with your TK power that can withstand the explosions, and then we'll just set off the bombs, and then no problem. And so Condor points out saying, okay, but Canary has to be nearby me. And she's like, what? Why? And he explains, my powers get stronger when you're around. And she's like, what? You've never mentioned this before. What in the hell are you talking about? And he's just like, no, trust me, it's totally a thing. So they all leap into action. They set up the TK thing. They set off the bombs. And, of course, it worked. And he's a little bit worse for wear, but Condor withstood the thing. So they're trying to undo the chains that Mambetti is tied up with. But there's this big-ass lock that they're trying to pick through. And then all of a sudden, a sledgehammer comes down out of nowhere and just breaks the lock. And Condor looks up and says, who the hell are you jokers? And we see the Suicide Squad. Harley, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, and King Shark. And apparently they want Dr. Mambetti to come with them instead. So, Birds of Prey versus Suicide Squad, which is weird. Obviously, placement-wise, this has to come before Forever Evil, to an extent. Because, you know, Suicide Squad ended pretty much around Forever Evil's time. But I don't know if that lines up timeline-wise. Well, we'll see. Overall, it's okay. It's an alright issue. I'm a little bit more happy with it than I was last issue, because that one felt just so out of nowhere. It was just a completely separate plot. This one at least feels like it's getting a bit more into the same groove as to what I'm expecting here, and at least it's linking over, I'm hoping, into the next issue with the Suicide Squad, because if not, Christ, that would be a hell of a setup just to throw away. So yeah, it's like a, I'll give this one a 7. It's a low 7. It's almost a 6.5, but still 7 nonetheless. So yeah, it's a fine issue. It's probably the best it's been in a little while, so we'll see if we can keep it up, but eh. Superboy number 32, written by Aaron Kuder, art by Jorge Jimenez. So last issue, Superboy took out Parasite and then had some weird mental break thing where he realized he could hear the thoughts of whatever other Superboys around. So we open up this issue, and Parasite, who's had his arms and legs chopped off, is still just screaming out how he's going to kill Superboy. But Superboy's like catatonic. He's just standing there, and he can hear the other Superboy's voice in his head. And all the other people at Star Labs like see him talking to himself, and they're like, okay, yeah, he's kind of crazy now. That's kind of a thing going on. And Superboy's like, I'm not crazy. Whatever went on with Parasite there, I got my TK abilities back, and also I can hear something, an alternate version of myself. Is it a clone? Is it like a different time version of me? I don't know. Regardless, I sense that like he is here in a stasis pod, and when I say here, I don't mean here. I mean like in the world, in this time. Right now in a stasis pod, and he's been trying to contact me. Also, Harvest may have something to do with it, but I don't know. I got to go check it out. So we then see flying over Alaskan airspace is an airplane with literally the entire cast in it, and Superboy is just pouting because he wanted to do this on his own, but the rest of the Star Labs crews is like, nah, man, we're here. We'll help you out. We'll do whatever we can. So at that point, the girl comes up. I still don't know her name because they never, ever freaking say it. She comes up and it just basically says, hey, Superboy, gives him a kiss on the cheek and says, well, you saved me from Parasite, and also, I think you deserve some happiness, John. That's what you need in your life right now. So, it turns out, the other Superboy has been hearing is being stored at a facility of nowhere. For those of you who don't remember, way back in Superboy's early days, Nowhere is the place that made him. And so in this facility, we see the defreezing, the revival pods of 3 former members of Nowhere, which is Hammersmith, Leash, and Rose Wilson. And they all step out and they're like, okay, what are you waking us up for? What's going on? And they're just like, we had a perimeter breach 10 minutes ago. A plane showed up. We don't know what to do. And Rose Wilson's like, okay, that doesn't look military. They don't have any weapons. And then Superboy like jumps out of the plane on the hologram and shows up there. And Rose is like, oh, that's far more dangerous than any other weapon. So they all arrive inside of the base. Superboy leads the charge. He's just like, look, we may not be fighting anybody immediately, but this place definitely has something set up for it, so everyone stay alert and nobody die. So they make their way in. They start looking at a bunch of like scientific stuff on the way down, and Superboy's voice in his head is getting louder, saying like, downstairs, I'm downstairs, like way down. But before they can do anything, I'm going to call them the Ravagers because that's what they were called before. The Ravagers jump in and start attacking. So Rose comes after Superboy, claiming that Khan is hers, and he's just like, whoa, hey, I'm not even Khan anymore. Leash goes after Guardian, and Hammersmith is kind of just hitting a bunch of other people. So Hammersmith comes in and attacks Superboy briefly. He gets blasted away with Superboy's heat vision, saying like, hey, Lay, we don't even want to fight. And immediately Rose is like, well, you got one anyway. So she comes up and she slashes her sword at Superboy, and he's not able to stop it, and it cuts his eye like out. He is out an eye. So Guardian and Needy, that's her name. The girl's name is Needy. So they try to hide from Leash. Leash manages to get it wrapped around Needy's feet, and Hammersmith comes in to attack Superboy because Superboy knocked Rose away in his anger, and Superboy's just not having any of it anymore. He's just like, I tried to tell you we're not here to fight, but I'm willing to do what it takes here. So he grabs Hammersmith, throws him into Leash. Both of them just go flying outside of the building, and wherever Rose is, she's just out for the count. So everyone's getting to their feet, trying to recover what's going on. Superboy is like, you all wait here. I know where I need to go. I'll be back soon. And so he goes deep down with like super speed, and he finds this big ominous looking door. He cracks it open, and inside is a stasis pod with Superboy inside. But as he looks at it, he's like, okay, hold on. That's not like Con-El. That's not like the Superboy I fought and took his place. That's me. Like me. But it's like a time display. That's my old costume before I took this one. So he slowly starts piecing together. He's through like feelings and just logicking it out. He's like, that's the version of me right before I fought Superboy in the future. And then Harvest pulled this version back and put him in a stasis pod. So this is the version that like had just finished killing millions of metahumans. So he's like the worst possible Superboy at this point. But the voice in his head is just saying like, reach out, touch him, do it, touch me. We can heal each other together. And John's just like, this doesn't feel right, but hey, I've done worse. So he reaches out and he touches the thing. And then immediately over in Star Labs, some of the scientists are looking at the radar and they see this huge like explosion storm thing going on. And the professor's like, what the hell is that? And he's just like, some sort of temporal field. And the professor's like, that sounds like something straight out of a comic book. So we then cut into what's going on the inside, because the professor says they're all on their own, and we see that in the rubble of this explosion are at least 24 Superboys, all of them slightly different in the way they dress and whatever, but they all say what the hell at the same time. So I don't know what's going on anymore. I've said that a lot over the course of this book. It was usually back when Scott Lobdell was writing it, but here's the thing with this one. It's not his fault. And I don't think it's Aaron Kuder's fault here either. He took a big swing here of, this book got really complicated, and I want to be able to write about a hero Superboy rather than this weird villain thing going on. So he took a chance, and he's trying to write a story that is going to get not only Con-El back into play here, but also redeem John in a way, which it's a big ask. And I understand it's complicated here with all the timey-wimey stuff as well. So I'm not surprised I lost the plot somewhere along the way. I don't know. I guess I'm truly baffled here as to what is even going on at this point. Obviously, you know, it's the rule of like, oh, you can't touch yourself time displaced or else the universe implodes because of a paradox. So something with the time streams going on. But I hope that we just get a full page at some point of a professor just explaining, here is exactly what is happening, because I, honest to God, could need that right now. Beyond that, it's an okay issue. I think drawing-wise, it's actually very well done. Jorge Jimenez does a great job, and I didn't see the fact that he was actually going to lose his eye. I wonder if that's going to stay permanent for a while. So yeah, overall, I give it I'll give it a flat 7. I think that if reading this back once I more fully understand it, I might appreciate this issue more. I also kind of like the idea that we are just keeping it a bit more simplistic in how we move from spot to spot. Like, you don't have to think about it too hard. It's just comics. It's just the flow of the narrative. So yeah, 7 for this. Justice League United #2, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Mike McKone. So last issue, the whole group got teleported up to space. I think it says Ran, but we're definitely on Ran. So we open back up real quick in Canada. And if you remember back in issue 0, there was a young girl who saw like a weird monster thing and they had superpowers. Her name was Miyabin, and we see her and her friend Heather are exploring out in the middle of the forest or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, I saw those heroes were fighting around here, let's check it out. And they came out and they find the opened hatch that the group went down, and it's full of Adam Strange outfits, Ram outfits, and there's just like, oh, is this where they live? The superheroes live here? And it's just like, why would superheroes live here? It's Canada, there's nothing around here. So all of a sudden there's a roaring sound from nearby, and we see this red smoke turn into the moose skull monster thing, and Miyabin is like, Heather, do you see this? And Heather's like, yes, we should run. And so they start running. It looks like it grabs hold of Miyabin, and as Heather turns back and like tries to figure out where her friend went, she just is gone. So meanwhile, on Ran, we see that they're in space, and immediately Green Arrow's like, are you telling me we're on another planet? what the heck? And then Animal Man just like tears into him, just being like, oh, we're so sorry. I've got a wife and kids at home, but yeah, no, ooh, Green Arrow can't handle being on another planet. Let's listen to him, everybody. Let's get him back home. And Stargirl's just trying to get them to stop fighting long enough to notice that the giant monster that they were fighting with before had actually teleported with them and is about to stomp on them. So they managed to get out of the way. Green Arrow fires off like an acid arrow. And he points out that Martian Manhunter's still weak. So Animal Man flies up, starts throwing punches. Stargirl's like, should I transform it again? It's currently as rocks. That seems really hard to take down. It's just like, well, it's better than wind. Like, let's make it something we can actually hit against. So don't attack it yet. So as Animal Man throws punches, he gets grabbed. Green Arrow's still throwing like acid arrows at him. And finally, it breaks apart as laser beams hit it. And who else swoops in but Supergirl? Mind you, Supergirl in her normal Kryptonian garb, not in Red Lantern garb. And we see her just zap the monster, and she's just like, look, I was just zooming through the galaxy trying to figure out my own little personal stuff. Who the hell are you guys? And Stargirl just info dumps. She's just like, so we fought these lizards in armor, and the bunker underground, there was an alien scientist with this thing, and for some reason the cosmic blast made a change. And she's just like, what? Okay, like, shut up. Take a breath. I'm going to just go fight the monster real quick. And as she flies over to do it, all of a sudden she's stopped by a force field. The monster's in a force field as well. And she's like, what? What's going on? So outside, we see a few Ranians come in and just like, hey, don't be alarmed. The station shells are just for containment briefly. We're just taking care of the monster. Turns out the monster's fueled by cosmic rays, and if they just shield it from that, it shrinks down real tiny like, and they can dispose of it easily. And it's like, yeah, no problem. And so Martian Manhunter's like, hey, I heard one of those guys call you head scientist dude Sardath. Is that your name? And he's like, yep, that's me. And until I decide you're not a threat, you will remain my prisoners. And the Manhunter just phases through the stasis wall and just be like, yeah, that ain't going to happen, bro. I'm a Martian. You're going to let us go now, or else I'm going to rip open your brain. And immediately Rand guys is like, okay, yeah, no, let's talk. So over on the moon where all the weird stuff's been going on, we have Alana basically saying like, okay, so you got like a magic space baby. What's so special about that? And it's like, oh, well, soon it will wake up and it will be under my control, but it doesn't matter. I don't need you prisoners here anymore. And so Lobo says, oh, so I can finally kill them all. Great, cool, let's do that. And then before he can, a hand reaches out, grabs hold of Lobo's leg, it like trips him. It turns out it's Hawkman, who lost his hand earlier. It grew back because of the nth metal. So him and Lobo continue fighting. Meanwhile, the rest of the scientists like make their way out of the room because they know it's going to be messy. And this is like, yeah, just keep him away from the baby. Once the baby wakes up, we're all going to be set. So back on Rand, Martian Manhunter sets down Sardath and is just like, look, man, we don't need to fight. We're all good. Adam Strange asks where the hell Alana is and just be like, okay, are you ready for the most massive info dump of all time? First off, your fiance's not here. I don't know where she is. But let me tell you everything about everything that's going on. And he just sets off. So the flash of light that transferred them here, Zeta beams. It's instantaneous transportation. Turns out that the threat that they've been encountering, like all the dead aliens and stuff, that's Ranian technically, but Biff, the guy who's running it, he is a bad seed. He's a bad dude, and they don't like him on Ran. And the project is called the Ultra Project. So he explains that because of the Thanagarian, Zarnian wars that were going on, like everything was chaotic. Ran is not a fighting planet. They're a technological one. So they tried to stay neutral as best they could so as to not get destroyed. And once the wars finally came to like a temporary peace, the Ranians sat down and talked with a bunch of different people who were on different sides of the factions there. And it's like, okay, how do we just stop this from happening? And they're like, oh, you mean mutually assured destruction? And Rand's like, no, we're not building nukes. We should do something inspirational, unite the people, like us, make them stop fighting. And so he makes the suggestion of, let's make a space baby. And we're going to take the genes from all the warring factions, and we're going to take their best attributes and combine them into one creature who we can all stand behind as the best of us. And he will represent all of us, and we will call it the Ultra Project. But as they continued on, they're like, well, I mean, why stop at just the warring factions? Let's just make the best baby ever. Like, he'll have all the coolest stuff from everywhere. So at that point, Supergirl calls him out, being like, "You were kidnapping people for your science experiment?" He's like, whoa. We just like got the DNA. That ain't what we were doing. See, eventually, crazy dude named Bith showed up, and he started taking over all of our like science experiments, and we were forced out of it. And Green Arrow makes the claim that Bith was apparently one of the original things that the Justice League of America fought. And he turns to Martian Manhunter and is like, "Isn't that right?" And he's like, "Yes, totally. I was supposed to follow up on it, but then, Forever Evil happened." So at that point, we see how Bith, he went in, he killed all the Iranian scientists who were there, and he took over the project for himself. And he's basically using it to create the ultimate weapon in the form of a biological baby. So blah, 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 a whole bunch of that stuff. They tracked Bith to a Thanagarian moon, and the whole reason that they started reaching out to people on Earth is because they realized Earth has a hell of a lot of superhumans. And they're like, well, we figured that, we just picked a few at random, eventually one of you would be superhuman, and we were just going to imprison you until you helped us. And he's like, that's not a good plan. He's like, we're not that smart when it comes to social things. So at that point, they say, okay, we'll stop Bith. We'll do what we need to do here. Do you think Alana will be with him? And he's like, yeah, probably, if she's not dead. I don't see any reason why not. So at that point, he says, hey, look, Sardath, Ranian dude, what you did was stupid and irresponsible. So we're not doing this for you. We're doing it for the sake of the galaxy, because we're the Justice League, god damn it. So back on the moon, Hawkman and Lobo are fighting in an airlock, and Lobo just smashes open the outside glass to the airlock, and Hawkman's like, that'll kill both of us. And he's like, good. As long as it kills you, I'm fine with it. So all the aliens on the inside, the scientists, are just like, Jesus Christ, those two are just absolutely nuts. Anyway, are we done yet? Can we wake up the baby? And so they go to wake it up, and then the pages from issue 0 show up. Justice League busts in. They say, hey, stop what you're doing. Supergirl's here now. And it's too late. The baby's already woken up. It starts using its power. And then we see a giant space explosion just go off into outer space. So, yeah, that's all that. I don't know how I feel about Supergirl showing up here. They did it, and it's fine, and it works for what the story is, but it kind of feels like they had her show up in the 0th issue, and then the Red Lantern stuff started, and they were over in Supergirl's book, and they're like, oh, well, crap. How are we supposed to line that up now? Ah, well, and they just had to do it anyway, because they couldn't undo the 0th issue. So yeah, no, it's a fine issue. It's okay. The fact that it shows the same pages again as the 0th one kind of feels a little bit cheap. I'm sure it's actually different in a lot of ways. I mean, I guess I could just compare it directly, but it feels like it's the exact same pages one for one. It's very close. It is very, very close. So yeah, no, it's a little bit shaky there, but beyond that, it's an okay issue. I'll give it a 6.5. It's perfectly serviceable, just not quite great. World's Finest number 24, written by Paul Levitz, art by Scott McDaniel. So last issue, Power Girl used all of, a bunch of power, and she caused a blackout all over Boston, and then Huntress uncovered a plot to get some radioactive materials and make a bomb, and then a girl named Tanya Spears, who works with Power Girl, got wrapped up in that and is a hostage right now. So Huntress is trying to free Tanya. She's got a gun to her head, and Huntress is like, okay, well, I can't do anything. He's a bit too close, and he's got the radioactive material. I have to make him think that I'm gone. So she jumps over the bridge that they're on, makes a sploosh noise, and she's actually hiding underneath the bridge. So the guy, despite the fact that his car is totaled, a Good Samaritan stops by, asks what the problem is. He gets carjacked, and they both get in. So Huntress throws a tracker on the back, and as the guy comes to, she's like, call the police, say your car was stolen, and also mention the radioactive materials. I gotta go take care of this. So she starts going out. Meanwhile, she calls up Karen, because obviously a nuke in Boston's a bad thing to have. But Karen is down at the nuclear plant, and she is manually turning the turbines herself so that the like generators to start back up the power plant are there. So she takes the call, and Huntress is like, hey, it's a big deal, I need a lift right now. And she's like, sorry, I'm too busy doing this, you're gonna have to do it on your own, bye. And Huntress is like, yeah, well, easy for her to say, she's freaking able to go across a continent for lunch. So she follows the tracker down to the Boston Common area, which I guess is just a parking garage. And we see the guys making away with the radioactive materials, but still holding on to Tanya. And Tanya's like, hey, I'm not going to call the police, I'm not going to do anything, just let me go and you can have on your own. And just like, no. See, this is, I can't risk that. We're going to show Boston the greatest and final fireworks show it's ever seen. So Tanya then manages to push the guy away, starts running for it. He fires off a few shots, and one of them clips her in the shoulder. So at that point, Huntress manages to catch up. She knocks the gun out of the guy's hand for just like a second. He reaches down and grabs it, starts shooting at her, and we cut back over to the power plant, where finally Karen has given enough energy that they can start back up the plant safely without, re-causing the huge blackout across the city. But she's approached by one of the scientists saying like, hey, would you mind just taking a minute? We've got an extra request for you. And she's like, okay, but my partner said something urgent was going on. So is this urgent? And she's like, well, a couple of the fuel rods are stuck inside the reactor and are threatening a meltdown. It's like, okay, that's a little bit important. So back over at the parking garage, Huntress is like, okay, you need to stay here, use your jacket to make a tourniquet, you're going to be okay, I got to go stop this thing. And Tanya tries to interject, being like, and she's like, no, dirty bomb, more important than whatever it is you're doing. So she runs off upstairs. We see the guy is planting the nuclear stuff, and he's got like all the stuff to make a bomb. But as Huntress comes out, he's obviously a bit pressed for time. He starts firing at her, and she's ducking and dodging out of the way, saying like, oh, thanks, Dad, for all the times you showed me how to dodge stuff, and also how I could use anything around me as a weapon. So she picks up a rock and manages to knock the gun out of his hand enough to make a sprint over to him. But he pulls out the isotopes from the canister it's in, and he's like, I could just throw this right now and it would scatter, and the whole city would still be like poison. Like, there's no way out of this. Meanwhile, back over at the fuel rods, everyone's inside their radiation suits except for Karen, and they're just like, hey, we read your Wikipedia page, it said you were invincible, you can actually do this, right? And she's like, yeah, totally, but like, what does my wiki page say? I haven't ever read it. So she jumps down, she starts reaching for the fuel rods that are stuck, and as she's pulling it up, she's like, okay, are these things able to take like any sort of force at all? And there's like, not really, please be careful. So she starts pulling them up, and she's like, all right, here it goes. So she starts pulling, she hears a cracking noise, and she's like, oops, all right, slower. So she finally does get them up, and back over in the Boston Commons, we see once again the guy's about to drop it. Huntress is making a mad dash towards him, and she ends up kicking the guy square in the chest as he drops the canister. And she wrestles with the guy as he goes for the gun. She's pretty much ignoring the canister at this point. The lid starts coming off loose, and it starts like tipping over in multiple directions, but Huntress is just focused on getting the guy down and out and no longer being a threat. And as she finally knocks him out, she looks over at the canister, and turns out Tanya followed them up, and she's got a hold on the canister, and she's like, one drop gone out, but I think that we can handle that with a hazmat team. We're good. And she's like, oh, hey, you're more than just a science student that got shot. I can see you're a hero. And she's like, I mean, I guess. So at that point, she says, yeah, I work at Star Labs. And she's like, oh, or not Star Labs, Star Industries with 2 R's. And she's like, oh, your boss is going to be very proud of you today. So then flying in is Power Girl. And immediately Tanya puts together of like, wait a minute, Karen Starr, my boss, is a superhero? And she's like, yeah, totally. I heard that you saved the day. You're a pretty cool superhero yourself, Tanya. Let's go to the spa. And she picks them both up and just flies away. So, yeah, that's that. It's okay. It's an all right. I mean, it's the same as every other issue in this book, and I feel like I've said that 100 dozen times. The tone of this book is very much just Not serious. It's just having fun, and it's doing fun little corny, like Silver Age feeling stories, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's hard for me to give it a deep analytical look when it is just such a bare bones, like, let's have fun sort of thing. So, was it fun? Yeah. I'd say it was a nice little adventure. It was a two-parter. They set up some stakes and then had something to do with them, I guess. But overall, it's just light, good-hearted fun. So I'm going to give this one, I guess, a 6.5. I mean, that sounds fair to me. It's hard to rate these things on the same sort of scale when we get like epic storytelling and like massive sagas going on, but 6.5 feels right. Constantine, number 15, written by Ray Fawkes, art by ACO. So last issue we had a whole thing with like a demon and like too much to go into, but the big ending part was that Constantine remembered that some random ass mage showed up and taught him the spell that like killed his family, and he wants to know who it was, and mystery directs him to Hong Kong. So we go to Hong Kong and we see that there is this man who is approaching this giant monster-looking thing, saying like, no, please, I didn't mean to offend. It's just that there are so many accidents and illnesses all over the city. We were hoping for a spell that could help. And then the big monster picks up the guy, throws him off the building, and he gets impaled on a flagpole on the way down. And Constantine finds a little coin on the ground as he walks in right underneath the body and says, ooh, must be my lucky day. So he makes his way into this building and he's commenting on all of the things that are done in this building that resemble lucky things. So it smells of peppermint and lime, which is apparently something in there. He passes by security and security's like, hey, you got to check in. And he's like, hold my cigarette. And the cigarette just shocks security. Apparently none of the floors in this building have a 4 anywhere in them. And as he gets up to one of the floors here, he finds a magical rune on the building that he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to pop right in. And Mystery, who's of course inside his blade, is like, this is stupid, man. She's got like incredible power and you're just walking into her home, just be like, yeah, she'll never expect it. So he walks in and immediately he's greeted by like this giant dragon that he says is called a Qilin, Qilin, and he immediately puts the sword away and he's like, I'm not here for a fight. Everything's cool. But he comments that the dragon is also a sign of good fortune. It's like supposed to be a blessing just to be able to see one. So he's like, all right, well, I'm just going to walk back through this door same way I came in. And as he goes back through the door, turns out it's magic. And now he's in like a completely different, like full palace area that's overrun with all of these red tapestries, jade butterflies, pearl monkeys. There's an elephant floating around in there somewhere. And in the middle is Graceful Moon, who is the mage who's doing all of this. So it turns out that all of these things are good luck charms as well. And the thing that Graceful Moon is doing is she has built this entire building to suck all of the good luck out of Hong Kong and just funnel it into her power. So she's basically a luck machine. She's just able to always be lucky, and she's using her magic to do like this incredible stuff. And as Constantine walks in, he sees like this huge whole palace inside of this one room, and he's like, are you insane? This must be taking so much energy. You must be fighting back like against the city constantly just to be able to do this. And she's like, I'll be here for a good time, not a long time. Anyway, what are you doing inside my place? Also, because of magic stuff, I already know the reason you're here. You want to know who taught you the first spell. But first tell me, what's inside that blade you're carrying? And he's like, don't worry about it. It's just like a servant of mine. No big deal. And Graceful Moon recounts like, okay, but like, the thing that happened to you, someone taught you a spell that killed your family and you didn't know the consequences of it. Same thing happened to me, bro. And that's like, it's a thing. And I think that the person inside your blade might be the person responsible for it. And so Constantine's like, wait a minute, are you saying that the cult of the Cold Flame is behind both of our tragic backstories? So then we cut to the cult's headquarters, where Sargon has apparently been using her acolytes to search for stuff about the blade that Constantine is holding. And they finally come across a book, and she's like, yes, of course, the truth about this blade. And they translate it out, and it means, in moonlight, the blade captures dreams. And that's when Tanarak comes in, just being like, Constantine tricked us into letting us have the blade. Clearly, he should not be allowed to have that blade, and we don't know what the hell he's doing with it. So, yeah, we were in trouble here. And Sargon's like, okay, should we just use the death spell that Papa Midnight gave us and just kill Constantine now? And Tanarak like clasps his hand together and kills all of Sargon's acolytes. And she's like, what do you do that for? And he's like, you said that we're in trouble in front of them. They were never going to see you as a god after that point again. You already lost them. So yeah, don't worry about it. We'll have the strength to control Constantine. We don't need to worry about killing him yet. So we cut back over to the room where Graceful Moon is now full attacking Constantine, trying to get the blade from him. We see he's being attacked by all these red tapestries and the pearl monkeys and whatnot, and he's separated from the blade as he's choked out by these tapestries. And so as she tries to pick it up and touch it, Constantine's like, oh, you thought you had one up on me? You haven't been paying any attention. And he somehow manages to turn the tapestries against Graceful Moon, and also the blade, like, just dissolves her hand. It just turns into a skeleton and then into dust. And just like, yep, look, here's the thing. The blade is mine. Don't try to do it. But if you want revenge against the cult to the cold flame, I'd love to have you on board. We can talk about like what we can do for each other here. And she starts casting a spell to get her hand back. And she's like, I am nobody's minion. I am not to be demanded or commanded. Like, how dare you? And we see Constantine just enchants that coin he picked up from the beginning, and he hands it to one of the little pearl monkeys. And by the way, this giant monster that was attacking, it still is attacking, is a beast made of coins. It's a beast made of like just these little tiny yen pieces. So she is like, look, I will tear down this whole place if it means I get to kill you. So let's have at it. And she starts like, the whole place starts coming down, rocks and stuff like that. And she's like, oh yeah, no, I totally think you will. But here's the thing. I don't think you're going to have time to do it. And we see the monkey climbs up onto the beast's body and puts the coin onto it, which it seems like it was trained to do. But then the enchantment on it does something where the beast just explodes. Its coins go everywhere. And immediately Graceful Moon's like, what did you do? And he's like, oh, well, I just interrupted your magic for just like a second. Just like it's barely gone. Like it'll be back in just like a few seconds here. But you were fighting against the city for control, and like you were draining its luck, and the city's now going to fight back against you. And now that you're without your magic, even for just a second, you don't stand a goddamn chance. So we see the entire place just starts crumbling down. Graceful Moon is buried underneath the rubble. And yeah, it was just waiting for her to falter for a second so that it could get its luck back. So John Constantine finds the moon's blade, and he's like, hey, Mr. E, you in there? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, did Tanarak teach me the spell that killed my family? And Mr. E's like, yeah, he did, didn't he? And then he's like, okay. And you're the one who taught Graceful Moon the spell that killed her family? And he's like, yeah, I did, didn't I? He's like, man, you are such an asshole. And then all of a sudden, he gets a vision, a bunch of chains holding together the realms of creation and whatnot. And he's like, oh God, I don't know what I'm even looking at here, but I think it's the future, and all the chains are just an absolute mess. So what does that mean? I don't know. But I haven't known with this book for a while. So interesting that they are setting up Tanarak to be like Constantine's boogeyman. I didn't really see that coming based off the original setup here. If anything, I thought Sargon would have much more tie-in to him than Tanarak does, but I will give credit here that the Cult of the Cold Flame doesn't feel like just your typical villain group in this book. It feels a lot more interwoven into Constantine's existence. I know it's technically part of his origin story now, but like even the fact that he had a fling with Sargon, Mystery's just like his little sidekick buddy now. Like it's got some flair to it that separates it out from other books. So yeah, I guess this one I give it a 7. I like the luck aspects of it. I like the idea of luck magic. That's an interesting concept to me because honestly, isn't that what Constantine really just all is? He's just the luckiest son of a bitch you've ever done seen. So yeah, 7 for this. Looking forward to the next. Batman Eternal number 10, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Layman, and Seeley. Art by Ricardo Burchielli. I believe that's how you pronounce it. So this issue, we open up with a flashback to 5 years earlier where Catwoman is slashing the face of Carmine Falcone, and she says the little something to remember me by line. And at that point, Falcone's like, do you know who you're stealing with? You and your friends are dead. And he specifically says, you know, you worked for Penguin. I know that. Like, that little startup, he's stupid, he's nothing, he's just a freak like the rest of them. And Catwoman's like, I don't work for anybody, I'm my own thief. But, like, it seems like Penguin's done a pretty good job of getting one over on you. And she picks up a cat statue and says, I'll be taking this for myself. Goodbye, and kicks Falcone one more time as she walks out. So then we cut to now where Falcone has obviously taken Catwoman prisoner. And he's recounting that, and he's like, oh yeah, no, I remember. I remember you, Catwoman, but not because you're you. You're a nobody. What I remember is that Gotham, I'm the only one that's able to protect it. Gotham needs a protector because otherwise Gotham becomes a city of freaks like you. And as he says this, Professor Pig is marching on Falcone's tower with his farm hands, which is just 4 other people with animal-themed heads. And he's like, oh, to me, my farm hands. So they start attacking the city, or attacking the building, just taking out the guards as they make their way up. And Falcone's just like, yeah, no, this city is just absolute madness unless you really, like, are able to control it. And Catwoman's like, you're crazy. You're not the Gotham's protector. Batman is Gotham's protector. And he's just like, wrong. Look, Batman is one of them. He protects the freak status quo, and of course he would. He's one of them. So yeah, no, he was so much easier to take out than I was told he would be. Like, this isn't even a game at all. And Catwoman's like, what do you mean you were told? And he's like, don't worry about it. I'm here to finish it and take back Gotham from the freaks like you. And as he says, he lists off the animals, like, you know, penguins, bats, cats, all the stupid animal things. And that's when Professor Pig enters, being like, who are you calling stupid animal things? He actually says, don't bet the farm on that, E-I-E-I-O, Falcone. So, if you also remember for last issue, we were introduced to the character of Julia Pennyworth, who is ostensibly Alfred's daughter, and she was injured, now she's staying at the mansion. And Alfred's like, are you sure she should be staying here? Like, she doesn't even want to be here. She's yelling out, she feels like trapped here, and like she's an animal in a cage, and Bruce is like, she was stabbed through the stomach, man. She's staying until she recuperates. So Alfred comes in and is like, hey, Julia. And she's like, I'm leaving. I'm grateful to Batman for stopping me here, but I'm out of here. And she tries to get up. And of course, she's too weak to do anything. And Bruce is like, look, your dad is a seasoned, like, war surgeon. He's going to be able to take care of you. Sit down and just rest up, all right? You're welcome to stay for as long as you need. So Bruce leaves the room and he meets up outside his Jason Todd. And Jason's like, hey, I don't know where Alfred was, so I had to let myself in. And Bruce is like, how many things did you break doing that? God, that's always a pain in the ass. Anyway, look, Barbara, she's so uber concerned about her dad's innocence that I think she's going to do something reckless. I need you to follow her around. And he's like, you want me to trail Batgirl around Gotham City? Like, you think that's really what's my best use here? And he's like, no, I want you as Red Hood to trail Batgirl around South America, because that's where she's going right now. And he's like, fair enough, South America sounds cool, just tweet me the details, bye. And he just heads on his way out. So Alfred then says, hey, there's a bit of a situation on the TV, you might want to check it out. So then we cut back over to Falcone Tower, where the police have set up a perimeter. Vicky Vale's there trying to get questions, and Lieutenant Bard is there, and she's asking questions being like, well, someone told me that Professor Pig is holding Carmine Falcone up there. He's demanding medical equipment and all sorts of chemicals, and also that he's going to transform Falcone into some sort of man-animal hybrid. And Bard is like, I couldn't possibly comment on the fact that he's actually going to turn him into a man/bird hybrid because he thinks Falcone sounds like Falcon. And Vicky Vale's like, okay, and is it also true that there's an unidentified female in there as a further hostage, which is the whole reason the police haven't busted down the door already? And they're like, couldn't possibly comment on how that's totally true. And so at that point he says, oh, and nothing to comment on how Falcone is part of this gang war ravaging through Gotham. And Bart is like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So at that point we cut over to the Clue Master plot, and Clue Master's talking to some of his lackeys, and he's like, did you kill my daughter? And they're like, yep, totally. We shot up the phone booth she was in. She's totally dead. And Clue Master's like, cool, awesome. Few questions then. One, why is it when the media reported on the death, the name Stephanie Brown was nowhere in the death list? And two, why is this random ass blog on the middle of the internet just saying my full freaking identity, man? And we cut over to the library where we see Stephanie Brown typing away saying like, oh, I know your plans, Dad, and I'm going to spoil them. So then the librarian comes up and says, excuse me, miss, we're closing up the library. Do you have a place to go? Because I've seen you here the past couple of days. And she's like, oh, yeah, I got a home. No problem. And as the librarian turns around, she hides herself inside of a like crawl space cubby and just like, this is my home now. This is where I have to be. So we cut back up to Falcone's tower, and Falcone is like, do you know who you're messing with? You and your friends are dead. And Pig is like, you destroyed my lab. You had no respect for my art. How dare you? I am going to be quick about this. And so he snaps on his gloves, and he's about to start changing over Falcone. He leans over to Catwoman being like, and then I'm going to do you. And I'm not sure what I'm going to... Are you like Big Cat? Are you like a lion? Or are you just more of a house cat thing going on? Regardless, I have several dozen cat heads, so we'll start there. So they look up through the skylight and they see the news chopper still flying around, and they're like, tell the news chopper to get farther away. I don't want them too close to my art until it's done. And then turns out it's not the news chopper. It's actually the Batjet, and Batman just crashes in, frees Catwoman from her holding pen, and just starts immediately kicking the crap out of all the people here. So first things first is to take care of Falcone, or not Falcone, Professor Pig and all that. And then as they all go down, Catwoman comes over and just punches Falcone again, just hitting him hard in the neck. And she's like, oh, just leave him to me, Batman. I got unfinished business here. And he's like, no, we're getting out of here now. GCPD is about to storm the place. So Bard gets the call from Forbes saying, hey, is it true Batman just crashed in through the ceiling? And he's like, yep. That's the truth. That's what's happening. And he's like, great. Send in everyone we have. Tell them Batman's the priority. Shoot only at Batman. Kill him dead. Every moment we waste is another second Batman can get away. Do it now. And Bart's like, righto. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. And it just like gives extra time. So eventually they get up in there. He can't hold back any longer. The cops get in, and Falcone's just standing there amongst all Professor Pig's guys who are all knocked out. And they're like, did Batman get away? And he's like, yes, of course Batman got away. He's like, what about the other hostage? And he's like, don't worry about her. She's a nobody. So they then cut over to Catwoman talking to Batman. And Catwoman's like, hey, Batman, you should know. Carmine let out a bit more than he should have. He said that somebody told him that you would be too busy with all this, like, Commissioner Gordon stuff, and you would be distracted and, like, easy to take out. And he's like, but that means that Falcone isn't the big fish here. Someone else is. Who could it be? Who? And then we see a shadowy figure in the shadows. So yeah, that's the issue. I don't get Professor Pig's deal. I know that's just because I never read like a lot of Professor Pig stories. I just don't get what his like. Is it just farmyard animals? Is that it? In which case, what are the Dolatrons? I don't. Is it like just body stuff? Is it just like messing with bodies? If that's the case, I'm cool with that, but like, what's with the farmyard thing then? Someone please tell me what Professor Pig's shtick is. So anyway, no, it's a fine issue. I'm glad we're finally setting up this idea of like, no, things are bigger. There's bigger stuff going on. And I think it's obviously trying to lean in a little bit to the fact that it might be Clue Master, because as we got in, I think Batman number 28, Stephanie Brown was the one person who like knew everything that was going on. She had like the full picture here, and obviously she seems to think that's Clue Master. So we'll see how that all shakes out. We got another 42 issues to go, so I'm sure we'll get there. But yeah, for this one, it's like I give it like a flat 7. Art's good, writing's good, just a solid issue all around. Future's End number 6, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Patrick Zurcher. So this issue we pick up with our group of villains. What are their names? Coil, Key, and Plastique. And they're talking about breaking into Terrifitech, and the whole plan is that they're going to break in and just steal some U-spheres before they officially go into production. And that's the whole plan. And Coil is like, he's on probation. He's like, I'm not doing it. It's not worth going back to prison over. Like, I don't know what kind of money you think it's going to be, but like, it's not worth it. Not even for like $1 million. So Key points out being like, look, we can get in just fine, and Plastique can get us out. Like, we got that stuff handled. And he's like, look, once we're inside, it's going to be like a maze in there. I can feel the electromagnetic fields in there, and it's absolutely insane. Like, and you say Plastique can get us out, but like, I think that's still going to be a problem. So as they're talking, we see random ass hobo in the background, and turns out it's not a random ass hobo. It's Terry McGinnis, and he's talking to his little Alfred box, and he's just like, well, I see her, Master McGinnis, and I think that yes, we should run a scan on her, because if you remember, the robot that came back with Terry, the one he's been carting around in front of him, is Plastique. So they run a biological scan, and turns out, yes, they are the same person. And he's like, is that good, bad, or is it like just a coincidence? So Alfred sinks into their voices and amps it up so that they can hear what they're saying. And they're talking about breaking into Terrifitech. And Batman is just like, okay, so that's the exact same plan we got. So is that good, bad, or a coincidence? So then we cut inside of Terrifitech, and we see that Mr. Terrific and his little group is trying to figure out who the new Batman is. And they say like, well, we found this roof footage. That's the only other time we've ever seen this Batman, and it doesn't really do anything to give us any more hints. And it's like, all right, well, at least we tried. That's something. And he's like, but I did figure out this. And they did like scans of people in the area, and they did a scan of the new homeless guy that showed up just a day afterwards. And they matched his physique as probably the same as Batman. And they're like, yeah, that's him. Like, he just showed up. He looks remarkably good looking for a homeless man. Like, that's just, it's clearly the same guy. So Mr. Terrific's like, all right, well, leave him to me. So then we cut back over to Shade. And if you remember, Shade is going to check out what the hell happened to Stormwatch. So they all put on some suits, and Frankenstein's like, I'm not putting on a suit. I'm already dead. Nothing's going to protect me if I'm already dead. So they go in and they see Ray Palmer, and he's like, yeah, sorry, I'm just making a few last adjustments on my ship so that we can go through the Phantom Zone. I call my ship the Nan Knight. And Amethyst calls him out on that, like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And he's like, yeah, well, I like it. So they boot up the Phantom Zone, and Father Time explains to Frankenstein what the Phantom Zone is and how it's, where Kryptonians kept super criminals and whatnot, and it's dangerous and whatnot, but it can be stretched, and you can use it for like extreme interstellar travel in a very short period of time. So what they decided they are going to do to make sure none of the villains can escape is that they're going to shrink down the ship they're going into super small sizes, open up just a tiny microscopic hole, and then whiz on by, and nobody will even notice them. So they're like, all right, cool, sounds great. So Frankenstein swears that he's only doing this for vengeance for Mermaid, Nina Mazursky, who was on Stormwatch, and Father Time's like, yeah, it's Frankenstein, all about the vengeance. All right, let's go. So they launch through, and they go into the Phantom Zone. And as they get in, they zoom past all these like ghost versions of a bunch of like Kryptonian looking villains, and just being like, oh yeah, no, I'm glad this works. We never actually tested it before. But as they get there, all of a sudden they're bombarded with some sort of energy. And as the energy hits their system, they grow back to full size, and they're immediately visible to all of the villains that are inside. And they start getting attacked. The ship's getting torn apart. Frankenstein and Amaya hop out of the ship and start fighting off the phantoms in there. And they see like there's a parademon in there doing like a Hail Darkseid, and Amaya's like, you're a little late for that, bro. So at that point, all the phantoms turn and run, and Frankenstein's like, yes, like the cowards they are, running from us. And Amaya's like, I don't think it's from us, man. And then all of a sudden he gets blasted with a huge energy shot. And it turns out in the Phantom Zone is Black Adam, who says, you want to fight, man? Let's go. Mano y mano. So then we go back to New York. We go to that bar that's run by definitely not Tim Drake. And he's doing last call, and turns out at his bar that night is Ronnie Raymond, who's trying to get absolutely plastered. And so it is long past last call. The bar's closing up, and Ronnie's like, how about another drink? It's like, nah, man, you are drunk, and we did last call 30 minutes ago. And so the girlfriend of Tim Drake, or partner or whatever, is grabbed onto by Ronnie. He's like, how about you take me home and tuck me in, pretty lady? And so he's like, you need to go now, Raymond. And he's like, oh, you know my name, so you know how super cool I am and whatnot. I'm on a football team. And that's where Tim steps in, of course, calling himself Cal. And he's like, I got this, Madison. And Raymond's like, oh, you know who I am? I could burn this place to the ground. I could turn you into marshmallows. And then, using just like a little bit of jujitsu or something, Cal just knocks Raymond out and kicks him out the door, saying like, when you told to leave, you better leave. And at that point, Madison's like, hey, I could have handled that myself. I hope you know. And he's like, oh, yeah, totally. Absolutely. I didn't doubt it. So at that point, a voice on the other side of the bar chimes in and says like, ah, yes, a very good job there, Mr. Cal. And we see the voice belongs to Lois Lane. And immediately both of them recognize that it's Lois, including Madison, because apparently she's had a few run-ins with Lois as well. And Cal's just like, sorry, Lois, whatever you want. It's late. We're going to go. And she's like, oh, really? How about this? And she pulls out a tablet that shows the Red Robin dead thing. And she's like, you don't have any reason to care about this, do you? And he's like, nope, really don't care. Anyway, I'm going to throw you out now. And she starts throwing out Lois Lane. And he basically says like, oh, so you're not going to acknowledge the fact that you were Red Robin, a former Teen Titan and partner to Batman? And Cal's like, I was never anybody's partner. Now get out of my bar. So pushes her out and closes the door. And Madison, not being stupid, is immediately like, so were you Red Robin? Were you a Titan? Were you ever going to share this with me? And he's like, Madison, Lois Lane is crazy. When has she ever been right about anything? Don't worry about her. She's crazy accusations. That's not me. So Lois starts walking in her way home. And we cut over to King Faraday, who has an eye on her. And he's talking to whoever inside of his headset, just being like, oh, yeah, I mean, I'm just going to go up there and I'm going to get her to see our side of things. I'm just going to go up there and get her as part of this. So we will get Miss Lane's experience on our side. So as he starts stalking her down the street, all of a sudden he's pulled into an alleyway by the masked version of Superman that we saw at the funeral. And he just holds up King Faraday, and Faraday is like, I'm sorry, is there a problem? And he's like, you're going to stay away from Miss Lane. She's off limits. And he's like, oh yeah, who says that? You? And then no response. And he's just like, yeah, okay, seems like you said that. Sounds pretty good to me. So Superman sets down Faraday, I think punches him in the stomach, and then just flies away and saying, you've been warned. Or not Faraday, Superman. And so Faraday is like, all right, well, I want to know more about that guy. Because why would Superman be wearing a mask? That seems weird to me. But regardless, that's not tonight's problem. We'll let Lois Lane just she'll figure things out and she'll come to us by herself. That's just inevitable. So, yeah, that's the issue. It's okay. It's fine. Again, it's a thing where there's about like 6 or 7 different plots going on. And they're interlacing with each other pretty good here. Obviously, we had the King Faraday stuff with Grifter last time. Now it has something to do with Lois Lane. Lois Lane is talking to Tim Drake. You got Terry mixing together with these criminals, mixing together with Mr. Terrific. It's a good interlacing of plots. I just feel like the mystery angle of it, this idea that we don't know who's doing what, is hindering this a little bit more than it's helping it. Like, yes, the intrigue is there, but it's forcing me to consider each of these plots individually, each of these characters individually, and I can't really lump them together as like, what characters should I be rooting for, which characters are like acting against other characters. It's very interwoven, and in a lot of stories that would be great, but here, because it's a world that we are unfamiliar with characters that may have changed significantly over the past 5 years, it's just a bit confusing right now. Hopefully, once I get a better grip on things as to different characters' motivations, it'll get a bit smoother out from there, but for now, it's just a bit too everywhere. So overall, 6.5. It's still an alright book, but I would like either less plots and more explanation, or just take it a little bit slower, one piece at a time. And that's it. That's all the comics put out by DC Comics this June 11th, 2014. And I want to try something a little wacky here, a little different. I know, 145 episodes in, changing the formula, what the hell is wrong with you? I'll tell you what, YouTube is really on me about engagement numbers. Not really. I mean, they're all right. But no, I want to try something because I want to know what you think. I am genuinely curious. I'm sitting here alone in a tiny little room surrounded by stacks of comics. I haven't touched another human being in years. I want to know what you think. So I'm going to start what I'm going to call right now question of the day. When I say question of the day, I actually mean week. And when I say start, I mean I'm going to do it this one time and hopefully not forget about it next time around. So, question of the day. First thing that comes to my head before I click record for this section. Do you think that based off of where we are currently at in the New 52, is Lois Lane a character worth caring about? Have the writers done enough with Lois, since she is no longer hooking up with Clark? Is she a character worth caring about? And I would like to know your opinions, and I'll tell you where you can leave them. We've got numerous locations. One, the comment section on the video version of this is always open on YouTube. Two, we also have numerous social media locations. We've got a subreddit, a Discord, a Patreon, all of the links to which are either on the screen or down in the description. So be sure to check those out and make your opinions known. All right, YouTube. Now, seriously, get off my back. I don't want to hear about it again. Anyway, let's see what's coming out next week. I kind of did that out of order, but I'm just going to do that way now on. Next week, we've got only 10 comics. Oh, darn. I'll have time to do other things this week. So, in no particular order, we have Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Harley Quinn, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Green Lantern New Guardians, Wonder Woman, Trinity of Sin Pandora, and then our two weeklies, Batman Eternal and Future's End. I'm not even sure any of that's tying into events. Maybe Supergirl? Maybe. But I don't think so. So it's just it's not a skippable week. You still have to check it out. But it is a less important one. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Be sure to give a positive rating, do whatever stuff. I know I just said I wasn't doing all the engagement stuff, but bite me. I need to do it anyway. Beyond that, tune in next week. Be sure to watch, listen, do whatever it is you do. Thank you so very much. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.